It's an honor, a true honor to be here in an amazing group of people and learning from godly men and women. It's quite a privilege for me. My name is Christian Ray. I lead a church in Austin, Texas called Tribe, and we talk a lot about culture. And I guess that's why Bobby wanted me to talk about culture. There seems to be this question sort of hanging in the air and being discussed in all kinds of places, how to be the church in a post-Christian culture and what's going to happen, how things are going to shift, and you can see things shifting already. And the reason I wanted to talk about that is because I happened to become a Christian in a post-Christian culture. I was baptized into Christ in the mid-90s in Moscow, Russia, and it was post-communist Russia. It was just a few years after the fall of the Soviet Union. And if you know anything about the history of that country, 75 years for 75 years, the communists would basically try to remove faith and Christian faith by all kinds of means, right? So it was, if you would find a truly post-Christian culture, that's post-communist Russia. So how does someone like myself, I was an entertainer, I was a fairly successful singer and producer, and toured all over the former Soviet Union, all of those countries that were part of the Soviet Union. I was into New Age philosophy. I was the son of two communists, my mom and my dad. So how does someone like that become a Christian? How does the church minister to me? And I think the main sort of thing for me is that we shouldn't worry about how post-Christian culture will affect the church. What we should do is we should remind ourselves that the church is supposed to affect post-Christian culture. That's how it's supposed to work. Because the truth is irresistible. I knew nothing about the Bible when I became a Christian. I knew nothing about Scripture, the will of God, and the truth was so powerful, and all the answers were so compelling, and the lives of the people that were reaching out to me were so different from mine that I just couldn't resist. So I want to borrow this term to describe how I think the church can interact with post-Christian culture. I think what we should be is third culture. Let me explain the term to you. I borrowed this term because I am what they call a TCK. And TCK is a third culture kid. A third culture kid is basically a kid that this term was coined maybe a couple of decades ago, and it was basically about children who are from one country and they grew up in a different country, and they don't fit into any of those two cultures, so they create this other third culture. Just to give you a description of my background, I'm Russian-Chilean. I was born in Moscow, Russia. My parents moved me to Chile when I was 9 months old. We spent a few years there until there was a military coup and we had to leave, and we were in a refugee camp for a while, and we were sort of kicked out, and we ended up in Germany. And then after a few years, we ended up in Africa. So by age 9, I had learned 4 different languages, and all of the things that go with that. It's not just the 4 different languages, it's the cultural dimensions and nuances that come with interacting with different cultures. So the dinner table in my family was really weird, because I had a Russian mom who would start speaking Russian because everybody else spoke Russian, and she would just freely speak Russian. My dad, who spoke perfect Russian, would respond in Spanish as if nothing happened, because we all spoke Spanish. And then my sister and we would respond in Portuguese easily, because we knew all of us spoke in Portuguese because we were living in a Portuguese-speaking country. And then in between us, we could exchange some phrases in English because we both went to an international school where we learned English. And what that implies, a third culture, is this high level of cultural flexibility. Right? So let me explain to you how that might apply to church life and to faith and a shifting culture in our times. If we consider, let's say, the default of humanity as being separated from God. So let's say that's first culture. And first culture is post-Christian, is worldly, is humanistic perhaps. It's also destructive. It's unhealthy. That's our fallen state. These are all the cultures that don't have Christianity invested in them. They don't have that Christian DNA. But if that first culture never gets touched by the second culture, right, nothing changes. But if it does get touched by second culture, it can be these people can be the most evangelistic and grateful and charitable people you would ever encounter. Because to whom much is forgiven loves much. And I'm one of those people. I've seen people in post-communist Russia be completely transformed, knowing very little, having maybe they're first-generation Christians. They've been around for a year, maybe a few months, and they would take off and go plant churches in completely different, not only cities but countries. The passion that arises from that is pretty amazing. So let me explain what the second culture is. The second culture, let's say it's a Christian culture. It's us now, right? It's I used to be in first culture. Now I've lived in second culture for over 20 years. And the good thing about the second culture is that it obeys God. It's aligned with God. We know how the world really works, and it's wonderful and beautiful. It's the best life you can possibly imagine. But if that second culture doesn't go out and interact with the first culture, what happens to us is we turn hypocritical. We turn legalistic. We forget the poor. We forget the hurting. And the solution to living in a post-Christian world, in my mind, is that the church should be a third culture church, which means that we are a community living in first culture, but we love in second culture. Does that make sense? I think Jesus was third culture, if you think about it, right? John 1:14, the Word became flesh and made his dwelling among us. That's the original third culture. Not to mention that so many people of the religious world, of the second culture, had so much trouble with him hanging out with the wrong crowd and accused to be a drunkard. Right? Paul was third culture. In 1 Corinthians 9:19 says, though I am free and belong to no one, I have made myself a slave to everyone to win as many as possible. And that could be a manifesto for third culture church. Think about Paul. He was Jew among the Jews. He was educated in Jerusalem, and yet he grew up in Tarsus, which was very, very Greek. And that's why when we read Paul's work, you see so many references, cultural references that are Greek references. They're Gentile references. So he could transition, and he can go from second culture to first culture, and that's why he became the apostle to the Gentiles, I believe. And if he didn't do that, where would we be right now? And intellectually, you would think, it's tough to speak to a crowd of church leaders because, you know everything, right? Right? It's true. I mean, I've been around. These are wise people, godly people. All of us are. Intellectually, we understand these principles. But the truth is, we're all vulnerable. We're all vulnerable. If you remember, there was a situation in Antioch. And in Antioch, what happened was Peter was in true third culture way breaking bread with Gentile believers. And then some people came from Jerusalem, from sort of the circumcision group, and he stopped because he was caught in this cultural paralysis. He was caught up in this. And Paul in Galatians says that he opposed him publicly. And he says he called him out on his hypocrisy. So if it's tough for Peter, it can be tough for us. And I think the antidote to this is for us to always rediscover the third culturedness of Jesus, right? I led a church in Russia for many years, and then Ukraine, and I've led churches in the US as well. And in Russia, it's a very interesting climate when you lead a church. We had all these completely non-Christian background people coming to the church. And we had athletes, Olympic athletes, and we had fashion designers, and I'm an entertainer, and we had Russian mafia members join the church. One of them, and the way we had these people become Christian is we were where they were. We went into the city, into their spaces, into their areas, and we went into the high places of fashion shows all the way to the lower places, right? I would perform all over the place, and I didn't hang out with the most savory people, you know? Show business is a messy thing. And I would have Christians be with me all the time. They would be with me, and they would help me, and they would pray for me. There was this one, I have a great friend, he's a wrestler. His name is Sergey. He is massive. He was a heavyweight champion of Russia, Olympic level athlete, Greco-Roman wrestler. And he was also in the mafia. And I was hanging out during a competition, and he cornered me in the locker room. And because he didn't like I had long hair. Back then, he didn't like my long hair, and he basically said, "You're not a real man because you have long hair." And apparently, allegedly, I've said back to him, "If you're a real man, you'll follow Jesus." And he started studying the Bible and became a Christian shortly after that. I have no recollection of saying that. I think because I was very scared. But he tells the story over and over again. When you're third culture, you go to where people are. We're in Austin now. The motto of the city is keep Austin weird. It's a weird place. And we do culture, we do church in beer gardens and indie music venues. It's a very tech place, and we do church in the marketplace and business. I have a dear friend, his name is Marlon. He leads a big team in downtown Austin with a software company. It's a very startup sort of environment. I work in startup environments as well. We own a business. And he's famous for going onto the floor where the salespeople work and everybody else works. And on a Friday night, he would basically stop everyone from working and says, "I don't know where you're going on Sunday, but I'm going to church. Who's coming with me?" He would do that. There's also this media aspect to it, right? Historically, I think the Christian church has been very hesitant to enter into the media space, but that's where people live, right? So we developed in Tribe, in the church that we're in, this 360 online media outreach that is sophisticated, and we invest a lot of time and money into it, and we do it well. And the reason we do it is not because it's some sort of shallow advertising, but because that's where people live. And we need to go there. We need to be there, and we need to be there with high quality content and message, because our message is the most important message, right? So let me ask you this, is your church third culture? And this is how you know. This is how you know. Does it reflect your city? Meaning, do you go out in the city and you see the kind of people you see in the city? And then you go into your church, is it the same? Is it a cross-section of society, right? Is it multi-generational? Is it multiracial? Socioeconomically, is it diverse? We go in Tribe from campus students all the way to millionaires who run banking investments and everything in the middle. Are people attracted? Do people walk into your church from your media outreach? No one invited them, but they know about you because you have a presence. We have people walk in every Sunday. They just read up, watched the video, saw the website, saw something on social media, and they come in and they engage and they become believers. Here's another question. This is a most personal one. If you would be around some religious people, would they suspect of you or be critical of you personally because you were hanging out with the wrong crowd personally? That's the toughest one for me, because I was in that world and I'm 20 years removed from there. And it's not natural for me to hang out with the wrong crowd. But Jesus did. And if I don't do it, why would my people do it? Right? Sergey, the guy I was telling you about, the wrestler, he became a Christian. Shortly, he was trying to leave the mafia. And as you know, it's not like they give you a severance package. 6 months worth of racketeering and extortion. It's not how it works. So his life was threatened. They threatened to kill him, and we were often on our knees crying, just praying for safety and just for him to stay alive. Eventually, his boss, the boss of Sergey, came to my house with a gun, showed up at my door, came in, showed me his gun, made sure I understand what's going on, and he told me, "What are you doing to my boy? This is one of my main people. Why are you brainwashing him? What are you doing?" And what I did is, I don't remember the details because, again, I was very scared. But I opened the Bible and started reading from the Bible. And I could see that man go from this angry, threatening sort of energy to going very small before the truth of God. And quiet. And at the end of it, he shook my hand and he says, I understand. I'll let him go. And he just walked out. Right? Sergey, the wrestler, he's now a church leader, has been leading churches for almost 20 years too. So when we talk about culture shifting to a post-Christian world, I'm not worried about it at all. Because Christian culture is irresistible, because Christian culture is truth. What I'm worried about is, will the church be third culture? What I'm worried about is, will I be third culture? Will I go where the people are? Will I hang out with the wrong crowd? In Russia, in Africa, in Austin, where it's one of the weirdest places you'll ever be, in 1963, that's where the Atheist Society of the United States was founded. And I believe if more people just go back and rediscover what Jesus did, what Paul did, how they transformed themselves from breaking out from their space and going and visiting people and being where they are, the prostitutes, the money changers, the tax collectors, loving them, breaking bread with them, forgiving them, and then calling them to repentance. I think we'll be okay. Thank you.